Okay, a group of high-profile Australians have written to the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, urging him to divert billions of dollars in frozen Russian assets to go towards financially assisting Ukraine. The letter saying that, and this is a summary, Australia can punch well above its weight at no cost to the Australian taxpayer. Joining me now is supporters of Ukrainian Network facilitator, Pete Shmigel. Pete, thank you so much. Give me in layman's terms what it is exactly that you want.
Well, before I go to that, let's also summarize where we're at in terms of Ukraine. I mean, what we've seen over the last couple of months is Russia becoming more aggressive and more brutal, Ukraine stepping up by being more inventive, Australia capable of doing more to help Ukraine.
Yeah.
And here we have this proposal. Basically, we know that the Russian central bank has invested money in Australia, just like it's invested money in other countries. We want to identify what that sum of money is and then allocate that money towards the reconstruction of Ukraine. Under international law, it says that countries that have been illegally invaded are eligible to be compensated by the country that invaded them. Well, Australia can play its part. You know, it might not be $9 billion, but let's say that it's even 1% of that. $100 million is a lot of money.
What do you think it is? Like, what kind of ballpark are we looking at, and how do you determine that figure?
We really don't know, and that's part of what this high-profile group of Australians has asked. You know, a couple of prime ministers, 4 ambassadors, is for the government to do that forensic accounting about how much has been invested in various things, like superannuation funds, for instance, in Australia. Once we know what that sum is, we can add it to what Australia's given already, which is about $1 billion. Even if it's half of that sum, it's a considerable amount of money that can go towards a good cause.
And we like to follow suit sometimes in this country. There's another couple of countries who have already indicated they're looking at this.
Absolutely. David Cameron, as recently as last week, came out and said a key feature of international policy towards Ukraine going forward is getting everybody's hands on this dirty money and putting it into reconstruction. So if nothing else, Australia needs to be part of that international development, particularly as we get up to G7 in June, when world leaders will decide, what do we do about this approximately $300 billion worth of dirty Russian money that's sitting in bank accounts someplace? Perhaps it should go to Ukrainian schools and hospitals and childcare centers.
Well, I would have no issue with it at all, but I clearly have no power in that space. There would have been a time over 6 months ago, just over, where we would have led almost with Ukraine nightly on this network, and I would do it on every single show. What impact are the eyes of the world being focused on the Middle East now having on Ukraine? Is the world not as supportive? Are you getting left? Do you need that exposure to keep it in people's minds so they continue to push their governments to give?
Well, I think that the real impact of focus going off on Ukraine is it empowers Vladimir Putin to become even more aggressive and more brutal. So in this year alone, 10,000 missiles, Shahed drones, and guided bombs have been directed at Ukraine. That's more than 100 a day. It's quite extraordinary to think about. In the last month, that's increased by 20%. There have been approximately 800 casualties in the last month. He's getting away with all of this because world scrutiny is looking someplace else at the moment. So it's important for Australia and others to turn the focus back and say, we can actually make a difference here.
Well, we're trying to do that here for you now. Just quickly, Donald Trump and the prospect of him becoming the next president of America. He is, of course, an isolationist. He has made many remarks about not being overly keen to continue Biden's support of Ukraine. Does that scare you?
It does. Some of the things that MAGA Republicans, and they're a fringe of the American political spectrum, say about Russia under Ronald Reagan would have been considered treasonous. So it's time for Americans to take stock of what's their real strategic interest here. You know, Putin has very clearly said he's not stopping at Ukraine. He's interested in Poland and Germany and America's allies. So we do hope that America writes the course. Having said that, the Ukrainians are wily and inventive. You know, they've taken out 80 Russian naval craft through their own devices, through their own drones. They're not going to wait back and just wait for the Americans to save them. They'll take the fight to Russia directly.
No, they are incredible, and it's one of the issues I disagree with Donald Trump on. Pete, thank you so much. Please let us know if you get any response from the government and what kind of happens thereafter, because we'd love to keep our viewers updated here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin.